He represents us in the California State Senate here in San Francisco. And Senator, let's just quickly dive into this because I know probably a bit of limited time at this point, but there's all these bills in Sacramento related to AI, related to regulation. There was a number, there was 50 at one point, I think it's down to 30 now. There's obviously yours, which you've been working on for a long time. Can you just quickly give us a state of play when it comes to AI regulation in Sacramento and what we might be seeing come out into law over the coming months?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. And AI is incredibly important. It is. Obviously, it's been around for a long time, but it's accelerating. The innovation is accelerating. There is so much promise for the good that AI can do for humanity, and it's very, very exciting. And I'm proud to represent the beating heart of AI innovation in San Francisco. It's also it's a very powerful technology, and it's a good time for us to just sort of step back and see, is there anything we should be doing to prepare for the continued growth of AI, to make sure that people can innovate and that it's benefiting society, and that we are getting ahead of any risks. Because as human beings, we have a tendency sometimes to ignore risk until there's a problem, and let's get ahead of it. And California is the place to do it. So I have a bill around requiring basic safety evaluations of very large models before they're trained or released, not limiting or restricting or banning them in any way, but simply requiring a safety evaluation. There is a significant bill to address algorithmic discrimination as AI models increasingly make.
Thank you, Senator. We actually, there's now a Wi-Fi problem, so I'm gonna just mute for 1 second, and they're gonna try to fix it. And then, but we did get most of that answer, so there's that. Okay, I'm just gonna dive in because we've got audio, we got video. You mentioned your bill, and you mentioned how you want to focus on very large models and kind of get ahead of future risks. I believe your bill still has a certain threshold in terms of the amount of training data, as well as sort of the money being spent on training that. And I know that some of those numbers have concerned some people in Silicon Valley as sort of maybe an arbitrary limit, or sort of something that might make it hard for people who do have a lot of data to sort of do what they want with their AI models. And I'm just wondering why you believe that sort of setting those thresholds is an important part of the regulation going forward.
Well, let's just be very, very clear. And I've been around the block in terms of some of these issues for a long time. And in the tech sector, there are people who just don't want any regulation. And I respect that. They're absolutely entitled to that opinion. And some folks they will criticize you for setting the threshold too low. They'll criticize you for setting the threshold too high. They'll criticize you for not setting a threshold. So no matter what we do, we're going to get criticized by some people in the tech sector. Others are being very positive about this. So we are focused on the very, very large, powerful models that frankly don't exist now, but will soon. So we set the threshold originally at 10 to the 26th flop. Some people thought that was too low. Some people thought it was too high. Some people thought it wasn't flexible enough. And some people said that over time, it's going to take a lot less compute to create very powerful models. So we added the $100 million minimum cost for training. And we did that to make very clear we're talking about the largest models that are very expensive to train, that frankly the large labs are going to be doing. We don't want this to cover startups. We want startups to be able to do their thing and not have to worry about this, and that's going to be the case. Unfortunately, there are some scare tactics happening now where some people are telling startup founders that they're going to be covered, which they're not, and spreading some other fear that's really misrepresenting the bill. This is a very light touch piece of regulation, and I intended it that way, just to require the largest labs creating the largest model, training the largest models to do basic safety evaluations.
I mean, I remember you and I first spoke about the bill and this issue. I think it was back in February. And, if I'm honest, when I put that story out, it didn't seem to get that much traction. And it's only in the last month or so that I've seen a lot of people online and here in Silicon Valley want to talk about it. And I'm just wondering about the relationship between regulators and the tech sector. I mean, a lot of the time when you speak with people in the tech world, they see government as sort of something they want to avoid or get around if they can. And I'm just wondering, is there a better way for us to have this relationship? Should people be talking to you more, or what do you think may make this better?
Yeah, I mean, representing San Francisco, I have a lot of relationships in the tech world, and but a lot of policymakers don't, just because of where they represent. And I think for a lot of people in tech, people are busy building their companies or just creating things, making things, living their lives, doing their work. And so I don't expect them to be attuned to everything happening in Sacramento or Washington, D.C. I actually took the fairly extraordinary step last September, 5 months before we introduced the bill, of introducing an outline version of the bill and making that very public. And I sent it around to some folks, trying to sort of flush out feedback, because my goal on this is to get it right. And we were not getting a lot of feedback for the first 8 months that this idea that one version of the bill or another was out there. It was very quiet, and then in late April is when some of the large accelerationist accounts focused on it and started tweeting about it, and that sort of began much deeper engagement. And I'm actually grateful for that engagement. We've had some really helpful meetings with folks in the open source world, with folks who are much more libertarian about these things, folks who are critics of the bill, in addition to people who are supportive of the bill. And we made some significant amendments to the bill in response to that feedback from the open source community in particular. I support open source. Open source is incredibly important. It democratizes tech innovation, and we want to foster it. And there are some concerns from some open source folks about the bill, and so we've been talking to them, and we want to do whatever we can to make sure that we are taking in that feedback and working constructively with people.
I know your bill built off of some of the ideas in the federal Biden White House executive order last year, and a lot of politicians in DC talk about AI. We haven't really seen anything concrete in terms of something we can expect to become law soon come out of DC. And I know in the past California has sort of become a bit of a de facto regulator on issues such as material safety and privacy more recently. I mean, is that what you are sort of trying to do yourself, or is that what we can see here? And do you expect maybe the federal regulators to also sort of follow suit and bring in their own legislation in the coming months?
Yeah, I think in a lot of areas it's ideal to have one federal national standard. The unfortunate reality is I'm not optimistic, and I doubt many people are, that Congress would act on some sort of reasonable AI safety legislation. I just don't see it happening in the near future. I hope I'm wrong, but the reality is that we're in 2024. In the year 2024, there is not a federal data privacy law, nothing. In the year 2024, other than banning TikTok, Congress has done nothing on social media. In 2024, Congress has done nothing on net neutrality. So I authored California's net neutrality law in 2018, hoping that the federal government might actually step in at enacting a law, and it has not. In 2019, give or take, we passed data privacy law in California. We passed some social media safety legislation, and it's true on climate action too. Congress has now done some really good things, but there are other things it hasn't done. And so, especially around tech policy, Congress, with the exception of banning TikTok, hasn't really done anything since the 1990s. And so California has a responsibility to lead, and we're well positioned to lead as the heartland of so much tech innovation. And I'm proud that we're playing that role. And we should be and are working with folks in the industry, in addition to academics and advocates and others, to craft that policy.
I'm just, what are some of the biggest risks with AI? I mean, concretely, that are in your mind? I mean, are we talking about some of the concerns that seem a little bit more futuristic, such as giving people the ability to do things that maybe they needed PhDs and security clearances to do? Or are we talking about some of the infusion of racist or sexist biases into algorithms, which we've already dealt with for many years up to this point?
Right. Well, I think it's various things. I mean, we mentioned earlier and as you just mentioned, algorithmic bias, and we're already seeing the growth of AI making decisions about people's lives, about processing an application or whatnot, and or an AI banning someone from a ban being triggered on, say, an online service, which could be accurate or mistaken. And I think it's very powerful. And so algorithmic discrimination is something that does need to be addressed. Deepfakes, deepfake revenge porn, and so forth. And then in terms of safety, in our bill, it focuses on catastrophic risks. So whether it's a chemical, biological, nuclear weapon, more than $500 million in damage to critical infrastructure, or committing a cyber crime that does more than $500 million in damage. So we're talking about really big catastrophic risks, and simply asking developers when they are training a massively large model, more than $100 million in training costs, to do basic safety evaluation for these catastrophic risks. And if you determine that there is such a risk, that it's real, to take reasonable steps, not to eliminate the risk, but to mitigate it. These are things that we should probably expect people to do simply as human beings, but sometimes we need to put it into the law. And to be clear, the large labs all said that they're either already doing this safety testing or they intend to. They signed an agreement in Seoul, South Korea recently committing to doing these safety tests. They've gone to the White House and said they're going to do it, and so on and so forth. So we're not asking them to do anything that they have not already committed to do.
I guess there's maybe a difference between the voluntary commitments and actually having to follow the law. But I mean, just lastly here, and then we will let you go. I mean, for people who are maybe here in the room, they're building their startup, they're spending 80, 90 hours doing that. And I mean, they maybe don't have a bunch of time to tweet about their vision or to hire a lobbyist to come and knock on your door in Sacramento. I mean, how can they be involved in, sort of being heard as these laws are being debated and decided on right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, people can always reach out to me, message me on Twitter or otherwise reach out to me. And I do like to get feedback from people, even when people are telling me things I don't want to hear. I always, you have to be an active listener as an elected official, and I try to do that. And I do really value people's feedback. All of the hearings on this bill and every bill are public, and people can attend and provide testimony. People can, through the State Senate, State Assembly website, you can provide written feedback, submit basically a letter in support or opposition to a bill. And I just encourage people, and I know when people, especially when you're building a company or a product or just working at a company, you're super busy, and then put maybe family obligations or personal obligations on top of that. People don't have a lot of time. The only thing I ask is I never have a problem being criticized or opposed in any bill that I propose. I do always ask people to know what's actually in the bill. And like I said, there's been some significant misinformation being spread, particularly on Twitter, about the bill, about how developers are going to go to prison under the bill, which is just completely made up. And some other just really extreme things. This is very light touch. You don't need to get permission or a license or approval from any government entity to train or release any model. If you are spending more than $100 million to train your model, if you're not spending $100 million to train your model, the bill doesn't apply to you. If you are spending over $100 million to train your model, then you have to engage in basic safety testing, which again, all of the large labs that are doing models at this scale, they're training models at this scale, have already said they're doing or intend to do. So I just always just ask for people to just know what's in the bill, and we're happy to provide people with information if they're having trouble accessing that information.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and for bearing with us. And yeah, all the best. Senator Scott Wiener, everyone.
Thank you.